It was supposed to be the moment everything turned around. The biggest sporting event on the planet coming to America. Millions of visitors from every nation on Earth pouring across the borders with money to spend and a whole month to spend it. The World Cup was going to be the great rescue, the surge that finally filled the empty terminals, woke the sleeping tourist towns, and proved to the world that American travel was roaring back to life. The entire country prepared for the flood. And then the moment came, and the flood was a trickle. The event that was meant to save American tourism ended up doing something no one was ready for. It pulled back the curtain, and what it revealed underneath was not a comeback. It was a collapse. To understand the shock of it, you have to understand the size of the promise. This was not just another tournament. It was the largest World Cup in history, expanded bigger than ever before, spread across more than a dozen host cities all over the United States, with the bulk of the world's biggest sporting spectacle landing on American soil. For years, the people who run the cities, the hotels, the airlines, and the tourism boards had been pointing to this summer as the turning point, the event that would erase the bad years and launch a new golden age of American travel. They forecast millions of international visitors. They projected billions of dollars in economic impact. They imagined fan zones overflowing, stadiums roaring, downtowns packed with people from every corner of the globe, hotels sold out for weeks, restaurants slammed. The whole tourism economy lit up like it had not been in years. The World Cup was the great hope, the cavalry coming over the hill, the answer to every empty terminal and every quiet boardwalk. And the country believed it. And honestly, the belief made sense. If anything on Earth could fill the empty plains and revive the dying tourist towns, surely it was this. The World Cup is the most watched, most attended sporting event humanity produces, a magnet that pulls people across oceans and continents in numbers almost nothing else can match. The logic seemed unbreakable. People might be cutting back on ordinary vacations, but this was once in a lifetime. The international visitors who had been staying away would surely come for this. The terminals that had gone quiet would surely roar back to life for the biggest party in the world. So the city spent. They poured money into preparations, into security, into infrastructure, into marketing, all of it a bet on the windfall they were certain was coming. The hotels raised their rates in anticipation of overwhelming demand. The airlines added flights. Everyone got ready for the surge. The entire tourism industry leaned its weight on this one event, treating it as the cure for everything that had gone wrong. And that is exactly why what happened next hit so hard. Because when the tournament arrived, the surge that everyone had promised simply did not materialize the way it was supposed to. Yes, fans came. Yes, the games were played and the stadiums had crowds. But the great tidal wave of international visitors, the flood that was going to fill every hotel and pack every downtown and rescue the whole travel economy, came in far thinner than the forecasts. Reports began to describe the gap between the hype and the reality. Hotels that had braced for sellouts found themselves with rooms to spare. Streets that were supposed to be impassable with foreign fans were busy but not overwhelmed. Fan zones that expected to overflow had room to move. The economic boom that the host cities had counted on arrived smaller than promised, sometimes much smaller. The biggest event in the world had come to America, and the crowds, by the standard everyone had set, underwhelmed. And that forced a terrifying question. If the World Cup could not fill these terminals and towns and hotels, then what on earth could? The first reason the world did not come the way it should have was the most predictable and the most self-inflicted: the prices. Faced with what they assumed would be once-in-a-lifetime demand, the hosts got greedy, and they priced the event for a flood that the prices themselves helped prevent. Hotel rates in host cities shot up to staggering levels, sometimes multiplying overnight as owners tried to capture the windfall before it arrived. Airfares climbed. Tickets to the matches were brutally expensive, and on top of the local gouging sat the strong dollar, which already made everything in America punishingly costly for a foreign visitor. So a family in Europe or South America who dreamed of coming sat down, added it all up, and discovered that the trip of a lifetime would cost a small fortune, far more than they could justify. Many of them did the only sensible thing. They stayed home and watched on television, or they crossed into the cheaper host country next door instead of paying American prices. The hosts had set their prices for a crowd they assumed would pay anything, and in doing so, they priced out the very crowd they needed. The greed that was supposed to harvest the boom helped kill it. If you have watched this play out and felt that something was off about the whole story, take one moment and subscribe, because the next reason is the one the cheerful forecasts never wanted to mention. Because the second reason the world held back was friction, the quiet sense that America had become a harder, less welcoming place to visit. Getting into the country had grown more difficult and more uncertain for many travelers. The cost and the paperwork and the unpredictability of it all adding up to a discouraging wall. And beyond the practical hurdles, there was something harder to measure, but just as real. A feeling that the warm, open, come one, come all America that the world used to dream of visiting had cooled. That the welcome was not what it once was. Travelers are sensitive to that feeling. They go where they feel wanted, where the journey is smooth, where they sense they will be greeted rather than scrutinized. And a growing number of them no longer felt that pull toward America, not even for the World Cup. So they chose differently. The event that was supposed to showcase America to the world instead ran headlong into the world's quiet hesitation about coming to America at all. The doors were open, technically, but the path to them had grown long and cold, and many simply decided it was not worth the walk. And here is the third reason, the deepest one, the one that turns this from a story about a single event into something much larger. The decline was already there. The World Cup did not cause the collapse of American tourism. It landed on top of a collapse that had been building quietly for years. The international arrivals had already been falling before the tournament was ever played. The terminals were already emptying. The tourist towns were already going quiet. The whole travel economy was already running below where it should have been, weakened by all the forces we have watched accumulate. The costs, the strong dollar, the cooling welcome, the world drifting elsewhere. So when the World Cup arrived expecting to ride a healthy tourism industry to glory, it found a sick one instead. The event was supposed to be a spark thrown onto dry kindling, igniting a roaring fire of visitors. But the kindling was already damp. The structure it was meant to set ablaze had been quietly rotting for years. And a spark, no matter how bright, cannot light a fire that has no fuel beneath it. The World Cup did not fail because it was not big enough. It failed to deliver because it sat on a foundation that had already crumbled. Now think about the cities that bet everything on this, because their story is the most painful of all. The host cities did exactly what they were told. They prepared. They spent heavily on getting ready, on security and infrastructure, and the enormous machinery of hosting the world. They counted the projected windfall in advance and planned their budgets around it. They imagined the hotels full, the restaurants packed, the tax revenue pouring in, the whole city basking in a once-in-a-generation economic high. And then the high came in smaller than the bill. The costs of hosting were enormous and real, paid up front. The returns were uncertain and, by many accounts, disappointing. Cities that had bet on a flood to justify their spending were left to reckon with a trickle, and the debt they took on to chase it. The event that was supposed to be a gift to the host cities became, for some of them, a hangover. A reminder that you cannot summon a crowd that no longer has the money or the desire to come, no matter how much you spend preparing for it. They built the welcome. The guests just did not arrive in the numbers they were promised. And that is what makes this moment so revealing, so impossible to wave away. An ordinary bad season for tourism could be explained as a fluke, a temporary dip, bad luck with the economy, a year to forget. But this was not an ordinary season. This was the single greatest tourism opportunity America could possibly have. The largest sporting event in human history, planted directly on its soil. With years of preparation and the eyes of the entire planet turned toward it. This was the best-case scenario, the maximum possible draw, the event most likely to overwhelm the system with visitors. And even this could not fill the terminals or rescue the towns or deliver the boom. That is the terrible significance of it. When your absolute best effort, your biggest possible magnet, your once-in-a-lifetime spectacle still cannot reverse the decline, then the decline is not a phase. It is the new reality. The World Cup was the test, and American tourism failed it. Not quietly this time, but with the whole world watching. The event meant to prove that travel was roaring back, instead proved beyond any argument just how far it had fallen. Step back and feel the full weight of it. The enormous promise, the certain boom, the cities spending everything in anticipation, the prices that scared the world away, the friction and the cooling welcome that made the world hesitate, the decline that was already hollowing out the foundation, the host cities left with the bill instead of the windfall. And underneath it all, the unbearable revelation that even the biggest event on Earth could not bring the crowds back. Because the crowds are not staying away for a season. They are staying away for reasons that run deep into the cost of coming, the friction of getting in, the dimming of America's pull on the global imagination. The World Cup was supposed to be the answer. Instead, it became the question no one wanted to ask out loud. If not this, then what? And the silence where that answer should be is the most frightening sound in this entire story. Because in the end, the World Cup was always more than a tournament. It was a mirror held up to America's place in the world. For generations, America was the place everyone wanted to come, the destination that pulled the planet toward it, the country whose very name promised adventure and opportunity, and a party worth crossing an ocean for. The whole premise of the tourism boom everyone forecast rested on that old magnetism, the assumption that the world still longed for America the way it always had. And the muted reality of this summer suggested that the magnetism has weakened. The world is not as eager to come as it once was. The pull has faded. The shining city that everyone dreamed of visiting has grown more expensive, more difficult, and somehow less luminous in the global imagination. And even the greatest spectacle on Earth could not fully reverse that. The empty hotel rooms and the thinner-than-expected crowds were not just an economic disappointment. They were a message about how the world now sees America. And the message was that the spell has started to break. Maybe it is temporary. Maybe the costs come down, the welcome warms, the friction eases, and the world remembers why it loved coming here. And the crowds return for the next great event. The pull of America on the global imagination ran deep for a very long time, and things that deep do not vanish overnight. But standing in the strange quiet of a summer that was supposed to roar, watching the half-filled fan zones and the hotels with rooms to spare during the biggest event the country could ever host, it is hard not to feel that a threshold has been crossed. The World Cup did not save American tourism. It exposed the truth that American tourism could not be saved by a single event. Because what is wrong with it is not a lack of attractions or excitement. It is something deeper, in the cost of this country and the world's cooling feelings toward it. And no spectacle, however grand, can paper over that. So as the stadiums empty and the tournament fades into memory, do not let the highlight reels fool you into thinking everything is fine. Look instead at the hotels that did not sell out, the streets that were busy but not overwhelmed, the cities counting their losses, the terminals that stayed quieter than anyone promised. That is the real story this summer told. The greatest show on Earth came to America, and the world did not come running the way it used to. Subscribe, because next we are following these empty arrivals halls back down to the small American cities that are losing their last flights, watching the modern world quietly disconnect from them one departure at a time. Until then, remember what this summer revealed. The curtain was pulled back, the whole world was watching, and what everyone saw was not a comeback. It was the quiet truth that the crowds, for now, are no longer coming.